For millennia, humans have been drawn to the sea. Today, we see the richness of the ocean from an increasingly crowded shore. 2 billion people now live along or near a coast. By 2025, nearly all the world's shorelines will have been developed. We still see turquoise seas, stunning shores, and markets full of fish. But it's a dangerous illusion. There's a growing crisis beneath the waves.
Marine life was there for 1 million years before there were people. So the idea that we are required to manage it is ridiculous. What we're having to manage is us.
There are solutions within our grasp, but will we take them? The Mediterranean Sea is an ecosystem in trouble. The tragic story of the bluefin tuna is one of its most dramatic and contentious issues. Every spring, after a transatlantic migration, bluefin travel to these warm coastal waters to spawn. And for countless generations, fishermen around the Mediterranean have eagerly awaited their arrival. These Spanish fishermen, the last of their kind, are going out to their nets. And like many fishermen around the world, they are worried that there may be nothing left to catch. This traditional method of tuna fishing is called the almadraba. The Almadraberos have spent 2 months fixing their maze of nets to the ocean floor in an age-old pattern. The 3,000-year-old contest begins. Over the course of the next 2 hours, the fishermen bring their boats and nets together. By the end, the color of the water leaves no doubt as to who has won. The fishermen are elated. Today has been one of the rare good days. But the bounty is an illusion. The Almadraberos catch has dropped by 80% in the past 2 decades.
Yo he llegado a coger 1.000 atunes en un día. En la actualidad, si cogemos 1.000 atunes, 1.100 en una temporada, nos damos por dichosos.
Fishers have known about the migration routes of tuna for centuries. Large-scale organized fishing, including tuna, was a feature of the Roman Empire. Even then, overfishing was a problem, and the Romans tried to control it. The bluefin was their prized catch, but feeding the Roman legions pales in comparison to the demands of today's global market. The race to catch the last of the bluefin began in the 1990s. Today, it is Japan that buys as much tuna as it can. Almost all of the world's catch ends up here. Bluefin fetch some of the highest prices of any fish in the world. So the fishery has gone from the hands of traditional fishers to those of the large fishing fleets that are armed with both speed and technology, radar, sonar, planes, and a ship called the purse seiner. It's high-tech fishing on an industrial scale. Illegal spotter planes relay the tuna's location to the seiners. One of them can catch as many as 3,000 bluefin in one go. It's no contest. Illegal fishing is rampant, driven by an insatiable demand for the fish's meat. Meanwhile, as scientists and politicians debate whether established quotas are sustainable, the number of bluefin continues to decline.
Vemos que desde que están los grandes cerqueros y las empresas del Mediterráneo, esta pesca cada vez va a menos, a menos, a menos. Porque nosotros somos una pesca muy selectiva y hasta que no aparecieron ellos con sus grandes redes, sus grandes barcos, nunca hemos tenido problema con nadie. ¿Y dónde vamos? Si nos quitan esto, ¿dónde vamos? Si es lo que hemos hecho toda nuestra vida. No conocemos otro medio de pesca ni de vida, solo el almadrabe. Todos vivimos de lo mismo, de la pesca de la tuna.
The Almadraberos, scientists and conservationists are fighting back as best they can. Tuna specialist Dr. Sergi Tudela is the head of Mediterranean fisheries for the World Wildlife Fund.
The bluefin tuna is a species which is collapsing as we speak right now. This is due to overfishing. Unfortunately, the case of bluefin tuna is not very different from the case of Newfoundland cod or other species that in the past have collapsed. The difference maybe is that we are well aware of what is going on right now. And this is the challenge we have ahead of us. Avoid the collapse of this magnificent species.
Although bluefin have been managed by an international commission for more than 40 years, we've fished out 3/4 of the breeding population in the last half-century. The pattern of the bluefin's movements in the Mediterranean is still a mystery. Tagging allows scientists to eavesdrop on their secret lives. But as tuna numbers decline, finding a bluefin to tag gets harder and harder. With luck, they'll tag 1 or 2 tuna today. The tiny tag is quickly inserted into the abdomen of this juvenile fish. If the fish is caught again, the tag will yield important information about migration routes and movements of the bluefin. Hard facts are one of the few ways to influence policy and perhaps even win a moratorium. Without a healthy breeding population, bluefin numbers will never recover.
Right now, there is many concerned people who believes that the only way to have a meaningful way to stop the declining situation is to adopt an international ban on the trade of this species.
Even as the size of the quota is slashed in the Mediterranean, the tuna's future, the health of the fishery, and those whose livelihoods depend on the fish are all threatened.
Porque tal como está planteado el sector del mar, yo creo que con mi generación muere el mar y morimos nosotros.
It isn't only these fishermen who are affected. As bluefin disappear, no one knows how their absence will impact the web of marine life. Science is only beginning to understand the complex role that top predators like bluefin tuna play in maintaining biodiversity. The tragic story of the bluefin tuna is just one example of overfishing in the Mediterranean. Hake, marlin, swordfish, red mullet, sea bream, and anchovies are all threatened. The once rich sea is being transformed in ways that are invisible to most of us. What we do see is a growing population and a growing demand for fish. From the port of Gibraltar at the mouth of the Great Sea to the shores of the Middle East, the Mediterranean is one of the most heavily stressed ecosystems on the planet. Nowhere is this more evident than in the Nile Delta. One of the largest deltas in the world, its outer margins are a series of lagoons and lakes that have sustained productive fisheries for thousands of years. Dr. Abdel Fattah El Said is from the University of Alexandria.
The Egyptian lagoons, they cover a huge area. They have very, very heavy vegetation cover. And this is considered like a lung for cleaning the air. So environmentally, they play an extensive and a major role in conserving our lives.
These productive coastal areas allow many fishers, boat builders, and net makers to live on the lagoons. When the Nile was dammed in 1965, its rich natural nutrients could no longer reach the fish in the lagoons, so fisheries collapsed. Then in the 90s, something odd occurred. Instead of an expected steady decline in fish stocks, there was a mysterious and welcome explosion. The abundance of fish helped to feed Egypt's rapidly expanding population. And it was a bonanza for fishermen. But it's not what it seems. This bonanza has a disturbing dark side. Where the Mediterranean meets the Nile, industry and agriculture are radically altering the natural landscape. Here in Alexandria, coastal sprawl is shrinking the largest coastal lagoon, Mariut Lake, to a quarter of its original size. Worse, the wetlands have been completely cut off from the Mediterranean by development.
اخدك معايا بالفلوكه دلوقتي وافرجك ده المصرف ده مصرف اليوم ماشي ده اللي بيغذي البحيره المصرف ده اصلا اللي بيغذي البحيره تعال اتفرج عليه كده في شارع كده بقى البحيره كده البحيره من الناحيه دي كده قطاع ده تعال سيادتك اركبك الفلوكه دلوقتي اخدك معايا بالفلوكه دلوقتي وافرجك بحيره مريوط من الناحيه دي كده ومن الناحيه دي كده تعال اتفرج كده مسدوده كلها.
With no renewal of water, the brackish lagoon is being choked by vegetation that thrives on the constant influx of agricultural and chemical fertilizers. Dr. El Said monitors the oxygen levels closely. Less oxygen in these waters is a sure sign of trouble, and that sewage and fertilizers are creating a dangerous situation.
There are signals indicating that something bad will take place very soon. If we keep this level of dumping of land-based discharge, then the crisis will be inevitable. So hopefully we won't reach this point. Otherwise, we'll be in trouble.
Oxygen is an essential element in water and makes it possible for fish, crabs, and most sea life to exist. Without it, they die. Smothered by overpopulation and pollution, the bonanza of fish in the Nile Delta is already coming to an end. Many of the world's coastal areas have become marine deserts. This may be the next. On the other side of the Atlantic lies the Gulf of Mexico, a sea much like the Mediterranean. But like the Mediterranean, all is not as it appears to be. The shrimp boats are out, as usual, plying the waters. Dolphins follow, in water that looks as blue as ever. But up ahead, an ocean of life quietly fades to black. This is the dead zone. The only sound is the boat's engine. Here, there are no birds, no sharks, no fish, no life at all. Only the pelican, out on its annual expedition to map one of the world's largest human-caused dead zones.
I think you'd call that 4 meters.
Yeah, catch the water at 4 meters, so bring it up to 5.
Chief scientist Nancy Rabelais is measuring the oxygen content at one of her many sampling stations. Dead zones occur wherever oxygen is depleted below the level necessary to sustain marine life. It's called hypoxia. Every spring, the Mississippi River washes fertilizers and sewage from 32 states into the Delta and into the Gulf of Mexico. All these nutrients cause a massive bloom of algae. When they die, they decompose on the seabed, using up all the oxygen.
And the green line is the oxygen, which I'm very interested in.
As Rabelais watches, the impact of the declining oxygen levels on marine life is predictable.
Drops to about 3, then things like sharks and stingrays will start to move out of the area. And below 2, shrimp, fish, crabs will start to move out.
For sea life, it's as if all the air were suddenly sucked out of the world. Those creatures that can swim or crawl away fast enough may survive. Those who can't, die. They die because they can't breathe and because the water has become a toxic soup.
Brian, I'm going to take number 4, okay?
Okay. You got number 3.
We just took this water from the bottom, and it smells like hydrogen sulfide. which means that there's no oxygen on the bottom. There's absolutely no oxygen on the bottom. And hydrogen sulfide is toxic to animals. So any of the animals living in the bottom right now are either going to die because there's no oxygen or because of hydrogen sulfide toxicity. I can smell it. I know I would measure it. If you can smell it, you can measure it.
Dr. Rabelais maps the Gulf's dead zone every year, and every year its menace grows. It was first discovered in the 1970s, and at times has grown to 22,000 square kilometers. Its lethal waters spread from the Mississippi to Texas.
This is our 25th cruise to map this area. I started in 1985. Every year we find something different. It's either that the low oxygen forms now where it didn't form before, or if it did, it's much worse now. And it's gone from being aperiodic, not happening very often, to being a persistent problem in many areas.
Coastal dead zones are springing up all over the planet. Now there are over 400, many increasing in size and duration. They have doubled in number every 10 years since 1960. The worst is the 70,000 square kilometer Baltic Sea dead zone.
The open ocean has natural oxygen minimum zones, but we're talking about the coastal ocean where humans have definitely impacted the water quality. This low oxygen on the Louisiana continental shelf has not always been here. We have a lot of good sediment records, and since the 1950s, there's been an increase in the indicators that tell us the hypoxia has gotten worse. It's a symptom of a sick ecosystem, because this is not natural. It's a system out of kilter.
Hypoxia is rapidly becoming the greatest threat to fish stocks in the Gulf of Mexico because it forces them to leave their feeding, spawning, and maturation grounds. Things look good at the Dean Blanchard Shrimp Factory in Louisiana, but it doesn't tell the whole story.
Oh, it virtually knocks us out. It kills us. You know, the reason they call it a dead zone is wherever it's at, everything in it's dead. So you could be going from getting 100,000 pounds of shrimp a day, and the dead zone moves in, and the next day there's nothing. The guys put their trawls in the water, and they pick up their nets, and there's nothing in there. We probably lost 2.5 million pounds of production because of the dead zone last year.
Coastal development compounds the problem. Wetlands that used to absorb the excess nutrients from the river have been lost at an alarming rate to both people and industry. Louisiana alone loses the equivalent of about 1 football field of wetlands every half hour.
Well, they're destroying our wetlands. The Corps of Engineers came in and put up a levee system and changed the natural flow of the river. And, you know, it's like the old butter commercial. You can't mess with Mother Nature. And these people think they're smarter than Mother Nature, but they're not, you know.
Many of the effects caused by the dead zone are obvious, but scientists are seeing more subtle changes. Croaker, an important commercial fish in the Gulf, are showing some ominous effects of the toxic waters.
There's a lot known about how hypoxia is formed now, but there's not much known about how it affects animals, except when, of course, it kills them when it's so severe. So what we were concerned about is low levels of low oxygen, not so low that it kills the animals, but how does it affect their complete life history?
Save the croaker. So these are all juveniles. They're in the nursery area here, and then when they get a little larger, they'll move into deeper water for feeding.
In his lab, the emerging picture is grim.
First of all, we've seen that the development in eggs and sperm is dramatically impaired, which makes one concerned about how many fish from this region are able to actually produce viable eggs and sperm that can contribute to the next generation. That's all the opening. We found some of the females had male reproductive tissues in their ovaries, which suggested a process called masculinization. That is, they made sperm. We had never seen this with any chemical exposures before, so this was a great surprise to us.
It's a dire prognosis. The very ocean that gave birth to all life is not only suffocating, it's also changing basic biology. Here on the shores of the Gulf of Mexico, you'd never know it. Everyone wants to live here, play in its waters, and eat the bounty it provides. Greg Stuntz and his team simply want to protect it. The Gulf is an exceptionally productive sea, and much of the life in it is born here.
I would just pull it right along this edge, Megan, kind of like, yeah, like right there would be good.
If stopping all development is impossible, he'll settle for minimizing its damage. Stuntz is assessing which wetland habitats can be sacrificed if necessary, and which need to be saved at all costs.
In the Gulf of Mexico, 99% of commercially important species rely on the estuary for some phase of their life cycle. And so what we're studying by pulling this gear is to see if there is a relationship between the level of fragmentation and the marine life that we're seeing.
As he examines life in the seagrass beds in Corpus Christi Bay, he's encouraged by what he finds in these valuable fish nurseries.
Seagrasses, generally worldwide, have been in a state of decline. Fortunately here, we've had relatively little impact compared to most areas, so our seagrasses are in fairly good condition.
Good news, since they also improve water quality by adding oxygen to the water. Some other coastal habitats are proving to be a surprise. These rich oyster reefs were long thought to be of value only for the harvest of the actual oysters.
Typically, oyster reef has been very, very difficult to work in, and probably one reason we don't know much about that. The shells are razor sharp. So right now we're characterizing what type of marine life use oyster reefs, and it turns out they're really high abundance, at least as high abundance of marine life as seagrasses and marshes. And these areas provide abundant food resources, hiding places, so fish and other marine life have a low mortality rate, and ultimately translate into these fish joining the adult stocks that we have in the Gulf of Mexico.
Not only are these types of coastal areas home to a wide range of species, but they also form an important connection between land and sea. Seagrass beds, mangrove swamps, and coral reefs help prevent erosion, shielding inland areas from severe damage during hurricanes and tidal waves. They are some of the most diverse places in the oceans. Coastal habitats make up only a small fraction of the global ocean, but 90% of marine species rely on them at some point in their life. Coral reefs are the jewels of the ocean. They are among the oldest living communities on Earth and the most threatened. first light, fishermen head out to the coral reefs, as they have for centuries. Fishing has always defined the people of Zanzibar and their coastal culture. In fact, their very name, the Swahili, means coast in Arabic. The islands that make up Zanzibar are themselves ancient coral reefs, which sit off the east coast of Africa in the Indian Ocean. Today, the fishermen are anxious. Their baskets often come up with little in them. While the men are out fishing, the women's work here in Matemwe village is to glean everything else the sea provides. Now, there is little to collect. They plant and harvest seaweed to sell on the international market. But their income hasn't kept pace with inflation. A shifting global market wants a different species of seaweed that is very difficult to grow here. So families are losing an important part of their income. As the fishermen head home, the village gathers for the daily fish auction. What is being sold is survival. A quarter of the islanders fish for a living. In 1980, that meant 7,000 fishermen. Today, it means 26,000. Fisheries biologist Dr. Nariman Jadawi is at the Matemwe auction to monitor the catch. She grew up on the island. She's convinced that marine resources need local management in order to prevent a collapse of the ecosystem. The astounding variety of coral reef fish is on full display. But as in the Mediterranean and the Gulf of Mexico, these coastal fish stocks are under intense pressure.
When you ask the fishermen, what do you think? How was the fisheries 10 years ago and now? Most of them say they have reduced. But for Zanzibar, when you look at the catch, in 1980 it's around 20,000 tons per year. 2009 is also around 20,000 tons. But the number of fishermen have increased, so catch per fisherman have definitely reduced.
Although the coral reefs appear to be teeming with life, it's an illusion. This is only a fraction of the number and variety of fish that were once found here. Fish size has also decreased dramatically because of overfishing. Global issues like climate change also have an impact. Protecting the reef, like they do here at the tiny Chumbe Marine Park, is an insurance policy for the future.
All over Zanzibar, we see signs of overfishing, but the reefs have deteriorated, partly because of global warming. We work closely with the fishermen along the coast here, and they benefit from fishing just outside the park borders. And then they see that they catch bigger fish, they catch more fish when they come close to the park. So by leaving this tiny area alone, they can actually directly benefit from catching more fish. The local fishermen want to conserve their resources, so I think some kind of ownership where actually the local villagers are given the right to manage their own resources, that would create an incentive for them to actually manage the resources better.
Ensuring that local people have a stake in the future is at the heart of several new conservation projects. And one of those is here on the Fumba Peninsula. Dr. Jadawi's solution is to have the women manage the resources along the shore so they can once again supplement their family's income. The women of Fumba have always collected shellfish, but now they work with Jadawi in experimental no-take zones in the tidal pools. They leave the smaller shellfish to grow so they can reproduce. Jadawi has made the women conservation monitors.
Hii anadara kitaalam tunaita korobwe, si? Kiandika unaziandika aina yake.
Aina gani?
Korobwe. Ngapi, number 3? The women of Fumba are improving their livelihood at the same time conserving their resource. We have initiated no-take zones in all the 4 small villages. Why no-take zones? Because they always go and collect. They need to have an area which is like a nursery to remain intact. So in that no-take zone, which is the size maybe of 2 football pitches, nobody is allowed to collect anything. You are not even allowed to go and fish on top of that no-take area so that it remains intact. The shells and other organisms will be bigger, they will produce and feed the other areas.
Every 6 months, the women count and measure the shellfish. They present the results to the community so that everyone has a stake in the new conservation ethic. For now, it's the need to eat that drives the villagers. Hunger can easily drown out the conservation message.
They monitor themselves and they see that there is a product. It's really a conserved area and they see the benefit. But if they are just told conservation, conservation, for what? They are poor. They cannot get anything from that. Then definitely they will not accept.
With one good idea and a few dollars worth of equipment, the women have expanded their business to become oyster farmers and entrepreneurs. Nothing is wasted. The oysters are used as food, and the shells are made into jewelry to sell to tourists. But Dr. Jadawi has added a new twist, pearl farming. The villagers are attempting to secure their future through sustainable development on a small local scale. And what benefits them is also benefiting the environment.
So what I would like to see is that the sea is conserved. So the ultimate goal should be improvement of livelihood while conserving the resource. If this happens, that would be the most wonderful thing because people will be happy, people will be earning money, it will be wonderful.
The people of Zanzibar can do little about fluctuations in the global market, no more than they can stop the effects of climate change that threaten the ocean and their livelihood. But they can create a new relationship with the sea. we've become a major force in the life of the ocean. Fortunately, it has some passionate defenders. Jacques Cousteau called the sea a silent world. He was wrong. Noisy sea urchins are finishing off a feeding frenzy, scraping their teeth along the rocky reef as they graze on kelp and algae. The deafening sound is a distress signal, an SOS from a reef out of balance. But here, on the Goat Island Marine Reserve in New Zealand, the decibel level has dropped radically, thanks to this man. Dr. Bill Ballantyne blazed a path 40 years ago as the godfather of marine reserves. Today, marine reserves are recognized as a crucial way of protecting diversity and habitat in the ocean.
How do you protect things you haven't even discovered yet? Well, the only way is to leave some chunks alone. I've been a marine scientist for 50 years old. During that time, our knowledge of this and that has doubled, quadrupled. But if I'm talking to the public or my grandchildren, instead of rabbiting on about what we know, I want to stress how little we know.
New Zealand is a small country with a long coastline. With no land in sight, it's one of the most maritime nations on Earth. It's no surprise that the worldwide movement for marine reserves began here. Nor is it surprising that the battle lines were drawn early. Fishing is a huge industry in New Zealand, both commercially and recreationally. Goat Island, near the Lee Marine Laboratory, is where it all started.
Back in 1965, when I took on the job of being in charge of a little hut in a field miles from anywhere as the resident biologist, my boss, Professor Chapman, said at a meeting, we ought to get a marine reserve. And everybody else said, what's that? And he said, well, you know, a place where if we mark some animals and build a few little cages and things, people don't kick them to pieces and eat them. And we said, great idea, go for it.
Scientists soon realized that large parts of the reef in Goat Island Bay had been grazed to a stubble by sea urchins. Their chief predators, snappers and spiny rock lobsters, had been overfished. Eventually, after a bitter 12-year battle, 5 kilometers of this coastal reef were protected in one of the world's first marine reserves. "40 years later, Ballantyne is still at it, and it is still a battle.
I keep getting questions at public meetings, how small can they be, you see? And I have to take a deep breath and then look the person very carefully in the eye and smile and say, before I answer that question, which I will try to do, I have to ask you why you're asking. If you were asking how little can we feed our children, people would worry about you. Why do you wish to know how little we could do? Isn't it more important to make sure we do enough?
The little experiment paid off. It took 7 years for the main predators at Goat Island to come back. snappers are now 30 times more abundant inside the reserve than outside, and the large female snappers here produce as many eggs as those along 90 kilometers of unprotected coast. The predators soon got the urchins under control, allowing the kelp and coral to thrive. Once again, small fish and crustaceans have food and shelter. The results startled everyone, no one more so than Ballantyne himself.
Everybody wants to know what would happen if we made a marine reserve here or there. And the answer is we don't know. And that's the best reason for doing it. You see, a marine reserve is a success if it remains or becomes more natural. That's it. There isn't a plan for this to happen. We're allowing it.
Poor Knights is a chain of volcanic islands where the land has long been protected. It's one of the highest-rated dive sites in the world, a seemingly perfect candidate for New Zealand's second marine reserve.
Just near the entrance where that rock's hanging down, there's some bubble kelp in that area.
Wade Doak and his son Brady are passionate about this underwater paradise.
In the old days, we used to always go in and see a school of golden snapper, and then fishermen caught them all. But since the marine reserve's been here, the golden snapper are starting to come back up at the Northern Arch. There's a school of about 30.
Wade is one of the country's pioneer divers and underwater photographers.
And how many watts are they?
It's divers like him, supported by the Lee scientists, who fought to have Poor Knights also declared a reserve.
So I've always said the day that the golden snapper come back to Rico Cave is the day that we're starting to make real progress.
Now at 70, he rarely dives. It's his son Brady who captures the images that tell the story of an amazing transformation.
They're accumulating from all around. They've gotten to understand that it's a lot safer at the Poor Knights than on the coast or anywhere else. Now we are seeing massive populations of fishes which were just a vestige, hardly any, almost disappeared. And the recovery rate, it doesn't increase sort of an arithmetical way, it goes up in big jumps, and that's what's so staggering. You've got to give it a little bit of time.
When the Poor Knights Marine Reserve was established in 1981, the stated goal was to protect reef fish. However, with the exception of 2 small no-take areas, recreational fishing was allowed.
They settled on a system whereby recreational fishing for some species by some methods was legal. Well, it's like if you've got an art gallery, you say, people shall not damage the pictures. You don't say little scratches are all right. On Tuesdays, if you're under 5. No. Protection is, something that doesn't have some sort of minimum level.
It took 17 more years to realize the folly of that decision. In October 1998, the Poor Knights Reserve became fully no-take, and the vibrant underwater world exploded once again with life. So it's no-take or nothing. It's proving to be an essential principle, and it's the only way to get significant results. New Zealand has been exemplary in protecting 30% of its land, an idea that the world readily accepts. But the idea of protecting marine habitat has a long way to go. New Zealand is also a leader here with 32 marine reserves. They've shown the world that recovery is possible.
We learned the hard way. I mean, going down this road, we fell into all the potholes and crawled out, you know, grazed and dripping. We went down all the dead ends and byways and got lost and struggled back. I'm really proud that we kept going, but I wouldn't like anybody to think we knew what we were doing.
It's just as if you put the rainforest back in the Amazon, and that encourages me immensely.
Today, marine reserves are an antidote to our collective amnesia about what the oceans once were and what they could be again.
It's quite difficult to remind people that all this stuff was there for 1,000,000 years before there were people. So the idea that we are required to manage it is ridiculous. What we're having to manage is us.